Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and by viewer and Patreon request, I'm going to be reviewing a game that I co-designed with Peter Gousis, Salvation Road from Van Ryder Games. This was not the first game I helped design, but it was the first one that was published, and man, there are some things looking back that I wish we had done differently. How bad are they? Let's find out and get to the list. So first for number 5, I am going to start out with a mechanic that I'm proud of and still really enjoy, and that's how the inventory and damage works. So for each of the characters in the game, and you're basically in a post-apocalyptic setting trying to gather resources to survive, they have a certain number of circles on their player board, and these circles can hold either a resource or damage. So as you get damage, your inventory naturally decreases, which has nice mechanical implications, but also some good theme there. And then on kind of a related note, I like how we did both the resources and the damage. For the resources, they have multiple uses. You can use them to stave off bad luck, but then you also need them to win the game. Each of them has like 3 uses generally. And then for the damage tokens, we had a mechanic where you didn't know what they were, and then certain events would cause them to flip and have sometimes surprising effects happen to you. So I thought all that worked really well. But let's go from that positive to a full-on con for my number 4, one of, I think, the worst choices in the game, which is how we did the Apocalypse cards, the events at the end of each round. So I don't think these are all bad. I think the theme for them, themed after the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, works pretty well, and I think there are some interesting strategic implications of the fact that there's only 4 of each card. You can kind of tell what might be coming soon. But there are 2 big things I think we got wrong here. First of all, I think it's too much of a surprise when you flip it at the end of the round and sometimes horrific things happen or you lose actions. That's why we made an official variant where you see the event at the beginning of the round to kind of fix that mistake. But the other thing, in all honesty, for this type of an adventure thematic game, I think we made them a little too consistent. I think we should have had more of them with wider kind of crazy effects, more narrative, more story. They feel a little bit too Euro-ish for the theme looking back, and I think we could have done better. For my number 3, I'm going up to a mix, although honestly for me this is kind of a pro, but I recognize how fragile and polarizing this part of the game can be, so it could be a huge con for some people. And what I'm talking about here are the road cards and how the game ends. So the entire goal of the game is to discover what these road cards are that await you on the way to salvation, to winning the game, and to find out what resources you need to overcome them. And I think for me that basic structure is where the positives come in. I like how it forces players to consider their turn-to-turn survival versus spending resources to find out what the end conditions are, kind of giving them that choice and that control. But speaking of control, the lack of control in the ending is where this can let a lot of players down, and like I said, can be a very fragile experience, because you never really have enough time by design to find out what's ahead on the entire road, and you have this hidden toll at the very end. So there's a very high chance that you can play the game super well and just have the wrong flip of a card or the wrong draw for the toll and die at the very end. But I'm going to go up to a full pro for my number 2, and this is probably my favorite thing we did in the game, and it's what I hear from the most people, which is the combination of your hero character and your survivor character. And I don't know if I've seen anybody else do this. I think this still might be a fairly unique mechanic, because each player has 2 characters, a hero with an only positive special power, and a survivor with a negative one. And really the survivor is the interesting part of this, because the heroes just do cool stuff. Every game has that. But the survivor has negative powers that are mitigatable in several ways. So playing with a different one forces you to try different tactics and different strategies to try to get them to still help the entire team. They're not just a negative person, they have uses, without kind of emphasizing or highlighting their negatives. I think it all leads to tough tactical decisions and gives the game good variety and legs when you try out different combinations. But I am going to end with a mix for the number 1, and that's kind of the core thrust of the game and the turn-to-turn motion of it. Because in general, in the game, what you're doing is going out to locations, finding resources, and bringing them back to the truck. Go out, find resources, bring them back to the truck. Now, the tension of the damage you can take, of marauders building up around your base, of fighting them off, healing, trying to stay fed, I think it all comes together to be more than the sum of its parts. But again, like I said with the Apocalypse cards, I think this deserves to be more of an adventure game. I think it deserves to have more variety in what happens, more narrative put into it. Like if we revisited this, I would love to make it more of a campaign game with different scenarios and different events and different like story beats. Right now, it again feels a bit like a Euro, but mismatched with its theme, mismatched with the luck of the gameplay. So I think we kind of narrowed our own potential audience by mixing and matching things that don't necessarily go together entirely. So there you go, that was Salvation Road, one of my babies. I hope I treated it fairly and seemed objective enough. It's pretty hard to find a copy right now, so I'm not going to tell anybody to go out and buy it, but I would recommend this one personally to gamers who like a little bit of chaos, like tough tactical decisions, like a bit of dread in their gameplay and a very high challenge, because even with our easier variants, it's still a tough game. But on the other hand, you probably want to avoid this one if you don't like dice luck, if you don't like card luck, if the idea of the end game suddenly making you lose on a whim just because of what you drew bothers you, as it bothers many people. And also, if you're looking for a strongly thematic narrative experience, you might want to use caution. I think there's some good emergent narrative to be had, but the game itself isn't really telling you as much of a story as, in retrospect, I wish it would have. And if you'd like to see a full playthrough of the game with me kind of giving designer commentary and what went into the design, check out the link that just popped up. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.